Lakeland PBS presents Common Ground, brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Production funding of Common Ground is made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their second century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Closed captioning is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Welcome to Common Ground. I'm producer-director Scott Knudsen. In this episode, producer-director Randy Cadwell joins dedicated volunteers who are working to preserve the Otter County Poor Farm Cemetery.
Before there was any sort of government social safety net, Social Security was instituted in August 1935. Who was responsible for the poorest of the poor? Well, the state of Minnesota placed that burden on individual counties. In January 1881, Otter County purchased 160 acres in Fergus Falls Township, 2 miles north of Fergus Falls on what we still call the Jewett Lake Road. And on that site, a large 2-story square house was built with a full basement and a steam heating plant. And as a working farm, there were smaller other outbuildings were constructed for poultry and stock. Apparently about 30 cows a day were milked. There was also a granary and a horse barn. The first resident was a man named Otto Schofield, who arrived on the farm in November 26, 1881. And there were typically, about 20 residents at the poor farm at any given time. So each township took care of its own people. The people sent to the poor farm were provided with clothes and shoes. And in the early 1900s, it cost townships $20 a person a month that they sent. That money went into a county administered poor farm fund, and the people hired to manage the poor farm had a salary along with room and board. The farm was as self-sustaining as possible. The county did not provide any assistance except in cases of extensive repairs or building additions. The poor farm closed in 1938. Of course, people died on the poor farm, and they had to have a cemetery. And we are now going to cross the threshold into the poor farm cemetery to talk to Bob Riepe and Vern Barker, who have been the champions in bringing this poor farm cemetery, again, I don't want to say back to life, but to spruce it up.
I was doing a project at a cemetery up by Perm, rural Perm, St. Joseph's Catholic Cemetery. As I was doing that, I came across a stone that was out there that said Mrs. Steichen, and she had a couple of her children were buried beside her, but there was no husband. I thought that was a little strange, so I started researching to see who this Mr. Steichen was. And lo and behold, I found out through the Fergus paper that he was buried at the Fergus Falls Otter County Poor Farm Cemetery. I had never heard of it before. I had no idea what a poor farm cemetery was going to look like. So I started doing research on that. 2011, I heard that it was located not far from the State Hospital Cemetery. So I started following the property line, going back and forth, looking for a cemetery. And I couldn't find one. Finally, I found a stone that was planted over in that corner in weeds this tall. And all of this was weeds. Why they picked this piece of property as the cemetery is because it is the furthest away from the farm. Once they closed the cemetery down in 1936, a farmer bought it, picked up all the metal stakes and started farming it. And it was farmed until the 1970s. And you would have thought somewhere along the line people would say, hey, wait a minute, that's supposed to be a cemetery. Why are you farming that? It took until the 70s for a guy that had worked at the hospital to let the county know that there's a cemetery out here and they shouldn't be farming it. So the farmer quit farming and it grew back into weeds, and that's the way I found it. First thing, we cut everything down, and then we started looking in the record books, death records, newspapers. I started going through newspaper by newspaper, page by page, and trying to find obituaries. Well, back then, especially these people, if there was an obituary in the newspaper, chances are it was only a sentence or two. So-and-so passed away and is buried at the poor farm. So we gathered a list of all those people, and then started going through census records. A lot of them, had a husband and wife and no kids. They were 70, 75, 80 years old. So I jotted those names down, where they were located. We were going to find how the was laid out. I took a hunch right away and said, it's probably going to be down in that end, since it is the furthest away. So I used coat hangers, started messing around with them. Within the first day, we found 26 graves all the way along that end, side by side, all the way down. These are nothing but regular metal coat hangers, which are hard to find nowadays. It's mostly all plastic, but they're bent in the L shape. I put them in my hand and hold them just loose. Put my elbows to my side and point these wires straight out. And if I'm walking over a male grave, these wires are going to cross just like this. And then once I get off the body, they'll go back to normal. Now you can tell exactly how tall the body is just by the amount of distance from start to finish. You can even get down to 12 inches baby. If you go across the body that's a female, the wires are going to go out. And then once you get off the body, and then they come back to normal. So we used these wires and went back and forth all the way along until we ended up in the back of the cemetery, and we found a row in the back row, away from everybody else. So we jotted it down, plotted it out. I had no idea what we were involved with here. We ended up with 176 graves. One full line, which you'd think that's all they would do is go up the next one and go one full line again. But they didn't go that way. It was kind of weird the way it was set up. So we were having trouble figuring out, okay, who's buried where. Fortunately, we started to notice some stuff that was logical. Every one of these rows, except one, all ended at the end of a certain year. Some rows lasted for 4 years, some lasted for 2 years, and then they'd come back and start another new row. Well, we didn't know for sure that's true, but as we put the bodies in the spots, then we realized, hey, this is the end of a year. And then they went back and started a new one. So that's when we knew where to look. My goal is to have 176 people identified and located in this cemetery, to give them a little notice that they haven't been forgotten. It's been my whole drive for the last 10 years.
I got involved one day. It was a nice summer day, and I had heard that there was a state hospital cemetery, but I never could exactly locate it. And so I decided to explore around, and I came through the woods and actually wound up over at the state hospital cemetery, kind of wandering around. I like history. And while I was visiting there, I looked over this direction, which is a little bit to the west, and I saw a flag, and I figured something else is over this direction. I'm going to go over there and see what that is. And when I came in here, I saw the cemetery and figured, well, that's an interesting thing. I'm going to try and find out a little bit more information about it. So I visited it a couple of times that summer, and I eventually ran into a fellow here at the cemetery who was walking his dog, and he kind of filled me in on some of the details and mentioned Bob's name. I said, well, I'm going to have to meet this Bob. I'd like to see what the story behind this is and how it came about. It was an accident, actually, is how I came across it. When I got involved, they had the stones in the ground. They were all blank, and I kept hearing, we're going to get these marked by so-and-so, we're going to get these marked by so-and-so, and I finally talked Bob into letting me look at some of these records, and I said, we got to quit talking about this. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it. So I kind of took the bull by the horns, dug into the research at the Historical Society, at the county offices here. I visited the Historical Society in St. Paul to look up death certificates. Back in those years, and even to this day, some of that information is questionable as far as spellings of names and exact dates and things. I figure if we're going to etch it in stone, I want it to be right. I don't want to have to change it after the fact, because it's not an easy or inexpensive thing to do. So I came up with some questions for Bob. I said, hey, this doesn't seem to match. You know, is this accurate? We looked for more newspaper clippings. It's an ongoing process.
546.
He sent me a list of names for today for us to lift a new group of markers. I spent 4 or 5 hours just digging through it to say, yeah, I agree. This one is probably accurate enough that we can process it. And there was a few of them that I kind of pulled out from the list saying, we're not quite sure of this yet, the spelling is off, or the date of death is way off. So it's quite a process, and maybe I'm putting more effort into it than's necessary, but it seems to be the right thing to do. This is the layout of the cemetery. So the first burial is in the corner right here, and they went in rows by what year that they died. So it's all chronologic order. When they ran out of room, they started another row and another row, and according to Bob's theory, the row ended here because this area was like a horseshoe loop where when they came from the poor farm for a burial, the horses could bring the wagon in this loop, remove the body, and then go back out there. So they didn't continue all the way down to the end on those rows. And here, this one here, you see continues down farther. But this is the road map that we use to figure out where each person is, the number that they are in their position, and there's a lot of sheets and things that we put together. Bob's got tons of them, and mine are a little more organized perhaps, but it's still kind of a mystery to get the right name in the right spot. But that's the goal. Bob is kind of in charge of the flower gardens, except for the one around the flagpole. We replaced the flagpole this year. It had been broken off a couple of times and re-cemented in the ground. It kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and I purchased a new flagpole, and there was some gladiola bulbs that were planted around that. So I'm kind of in charge of the gladiolas because those are one of the favorites. Bob has just planted a huge group of daffodils in the back and some more flowers back in the corner. The shrubs that are all the way around the border was originally put in. He was hoping it would become like a hedge or a fence line, essentially. We have some aesthetic work to do on our trellis. I intend to realign it, straighten it up, repaint it next year. The cross behind me, Bob painted last year. The sign over in the corner, I had new metal letters made for it, so it's an ongoing thing.
There's a lot of interesting characters. Unfortunately, 95% of it is sad. This is number 13. It's Lulu Harris. It's not her real name, but that's what she went by, one of her 4 different names. She ran a bordello here in Fergus Falls, not too far from here.
When it was legal, or not illegal.
And she was murdered, and the person who killed her is way in the back end.
This marker right here for Adam Gelmo, a lady from the Twin Cities, contacted us when she realized that he was buried at the Poor Farm Cemetery, and she is a second great granddaughter of this particular fellow. She went through her ancestry and created a family tree, so she was able to identify him. He has a brother that's 4 spaces down, but this lady came from the Twin Cities. We laid this stone with a ceremony with her and her husband out, placed it in his honor, and it's really a fun thing when we find someone who has a relative that's buried here. If we have their identification and we can actually lay the marker for them. Most people who are interested in ancestry like to make sure their ancestors have markers, and in this case, we were able to fill the bill for her, which was a great feeling. Most of the stones came from the State Hospital Cemetery that were originally mistakes. They had put the names and stuff on them, and the gal who was in charge of that information decided that they were inaccurate, so they couldn't use them, and they actually wanted to get rid of the stones. So Bob came up with a plan to bring the stones from there over here, and we would use the back side. That was the mistake from the hospital. And so some of them have other names on the bottom. We're going to use the top side. Recycling, they call it.
It's cheaper too.
Yep. He placed all the markers in the ground. His original intention was, I think, to have them actually finished here in the ground. That's a very expensive, very time-consuming project when you have to do it by hand. I decided to contact the local monument company, Fergus Falls Monument, and spoke to them about it, and I said, would you consider helping us with this project to get these markers done? We have just completed this last season putting an additional 60 back in the ground that are completed. Today we're lifting another group of 40 that we're planning to have the monument company. They've been gracious enough to come out with one of their boom trucks, park right next to the pile of the stones, lift it up and set it on the truck, which is a whole lot easier than hauling each one into a U-Haul truck.
The problem that we have now is, okay, we've found 176 bodies down there, but we've only matched up about 150. We still don't know the rest of them.
Mattis is home.
It's an ongoing project that probably will never get done in my lifetime.
So I'm Danae Johnson, and this is Vibrant Farm, and we are in Guthrie, Minnesota. We produce mainly shoots, microgreens, and a lot of lettuce. We produce for Harmony and the Harmony's Deli as well. And then we also do farmers markets every week throughout the summer when that's open. and then also some caterers and restaurants. As a young mom, I loved being in the garden. And then I decided that I wanted to continue that and try to figure out what I could grow inside when we had our first frost. I brought some microgreens to different restaurants in Bemidji, and I had 3 orders immediately for that next week. So we made this garage, finished it up, and we made it into our grow room. And so I'm able to grow year-round in here. It's completely has water and heat source. And this is my planting central. And I have all my dirt in here for planting. It makes it very easy just to scoop it in and load it up. So today we're going to be planting pea shoots, which is probably one of the biggest sellers. So I like to soak the water up just to get it to be slightly moist. I don't like the powder flying everywhere. Not probably good for us to breathe in. And so I just like to mix it up just a little bit. And then I just lay it right in there. I do several at a time. Like during the market, I do probably easily 10 trays of peas shoots every week. But during the winter, it slows down since we don't have the farmers markets. Then these pea seeds have been soaking for 12 hours, and I drained and rinsed them off. So you just probably want just about a single layer of seeds. Then we'll get the watering hose and just give it a nice good drink. This potting mix actually absorbs a lot of water, and if I don't do this, it'll be too dry and they would not germinate properly. So then I like to put the tray, another tray on top, because I've had them grow down through the holes before and fuse together. And, and so then I go like that. And then I have another tray I'll put on top. It's a really handy dandy tile. So after I get those all moistened and they're really germinated well, I will stack them under here. And I have several, these are all stacked and they're just all waiting just to germinate. And then these have been germinated for a good probably 7 days. And so they're gonna be for harvest or market. I have to water them every day. They are like babies to be cared for, but not too much water, otherwise then they'll drown. But these ones are kind of fun because they put them on Firestone pizzas all summer long. They do that at Green Scene at the farmers market on Thursdays. Okay. So then I just grab a tray and see there's water underneath there and the roots. So they're drinking water, and I find that it's a healthier system for them to grow. So I have everything prepped before I get started. I have a knife that I've had since the beginning. It's going on 5 years now. I have my scale, and I use my clamshells. I have a pad absorber that absorbs the condensation, and that increases the shelf life of all the greens. We just seal it up and we have labels so that everyone knows when everything has been harvested. But about an hour I go and take it and deliver all the shoots. I grow microgreens inside, and so that presents some challenges. So the challenges are you have to make sure you have good air circulation in the room if it's an enclosed room. And if the humidity is too high, you could have fungal issues. Bugs, if bugs start coming in and start breeding really quickly, that could destroy a whole crop. Some things that people don't think about when they're looking at the shoots is how much nutrition is in them. There's actually 40 times more nutrient density in the broccoli microgreens than in actual florets. And sunflower greens are one of the highest in protein in greens that you could ever get. Or the broccoli, how much vitamin C is in broccoli microgreens. It's just it has grown, and along with my family, my kids are very involved right now. They help me a lot, and I would not be here if I did not have them working with me. They help me plant when I'm not feeling good. But I just really appreciate my husband being there right beside me, even though he has his 2 jobs that he does, but he's willing to help me. So our hope for the future at Vibrant Farm is just to be a part of our community and providing food for our community. It's been really humbling to be able to work with Harmony and to provide greens for the community. I know there's a lot of great growers out there that can provide these things, but for me to be able to do that for the community has been an incredible honor.
Thank you for watching. Join us again on Common Ground. If you have an idea for Common Ground in north central Minnesota, email us at legacy@lptv.org or call 218-333-3014. To watch Common Ground online, visit lptv.org and click Local Shows. To order episodes or segments of Common Ground, call 218-333-3020. Production funding of Common Ground is made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their 2nd century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Closed captioning is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money by the vote of the people November 4th, 2008. If you watch Common Ground online, consider becoming a member or making a donation at lptv.org.